But what I'm talking about self-confidence are all the skill sets and all the arts of what you have to be good at in this business. So if you can imagine, there's a foundation of self-confidence that if I'm recruiting somebody to come into the business, I need to detect whether or not that foundation is there. But that foundation can be there, but then they might not ever develop a heightened level of self-confidence in the 5 or 6 or 7 crucial skill sets and art and craft in this business. And that is trained and taught and coached and developed.
As leaders, we spend a lot of time talking about strategy, systems, and execution, but often the real constraint on growth isn't operation, it's mental. Now, this episode is about why capable, driven leaders still hit plateaus, even when the business looks healthy on paper, and what separates those who stay stuck from those who break through. I'm your host, Scott Kreisberg, One Step CEO. Today, I'm joined by Jim Effner, President and CEO of P2P Group, and he's also the author of Bridge Your Gap. Now, Jim works closely with advisors, founders, and executive teams on the mindset, language, and performance habits that drive substantial growth. So, if you're leading a company, a team, or a practice and thinking about what it really takes to reach the next level, this conversation is for you. Hey, Jim. Welcome to One Step Beyond Cyber.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Yeah, so glad you're here with us. So before we jump in, we always love to give our listeners just a quick little overview, little background on the work you do, the advising you do for leaders, and what led you to focus on mindset and performance.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a quick overview, but it's hard to give a super quick overview to a 37-year journey. But the bottom line is I've been in the financial services world for 37 years. And 10 years ago, approximately in January 2016, I switched over and founded this company, P2P. And it was to be able to allow me to work inside of a space that I feel is a very unique niche, where I'm a subject matter expert, and it's allowed me to have a significant impact on that industry. And what we do overall is develop financial advisors in this industry who are already good to a level of being great by maximizing their potential and focusing in on their mindset, their beliefs, their sales systems, their strategies, their visions, stuff like that.
And when you say financial services, is that insurance or more banking, or is it both? Or
yeah, as Scott, that world has evolved quite a bit. When I started in 1989, if you were a financial advisor, really back then like a stockbroker. And if you were an insurance agent, you were an insurance agent. And nowadays, I'm sure there's some old school people that work in those two, but 99% of the industry has become unified in one. It's definitely not banking, but it is holistic financial advising. And it's where an individual financial advisor works with his or her clients on both risk management, life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care, along with financial planning. Retirement planning, estate planning, college education planning. It's one-stop shop, although I'm not a big fan of that term, but that's probably the best explanation of it.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I know that for maybe even the younger generation that listens to us, I think that there's still this viewpoint that insurance is insurance and financial management is financial management. And they have definitely become one. The products that are available today are incredible. But we could do a whole episode on that. With 37 years in this market, I know you've built, you've sold, you've relaunched now your firm. So what shaped your philosophy about productivity, sales leadership to be how it is today?
First of all, it all starts with a fundamental belief that I think this career is designed to be one of abundance. People who get into the financial advisory space for the right reasons, the world's your oyster. It's an unlimited marketplace. There's a huge need in America. There's really almost absolutely no limitation. And my philosophy and my belief and my experience and my time has been that there is way too many. And when I say way too many, 90+% of people who are in this space where the business is still a grind. It's the opposite of abundant. And it doesn't have to be that way. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to first and foremost create a venue to have a large enough impact to be able to take those individuals that are currently not really thriving, but have the potential to thrive, and be able to give them the tools, the mindset, the skills, the path, and the systems to be able to explode and take a significant leap in the right direction. The American people out there need financial advisors that they can trust, and financial advisors need help who are not thriving. And so I thought I had a great opportunity to be able to dabble in that space.
Yes, absolutely. And on that note, so a little bit more, I would say, general across whole segments of the market. I know I have a personal opinion on this, but I'd love to hear how you feel. And that is, are great salespeople born that way, or can they be taught or built?
Yeah, as you can imagine, I get that question all the time. And it's a little bit of a gray answer. There are certain things that I think are innate, that are part of a genetic wiring, that have to be there. And then there are a lot of things that are also built, developed, and molded over time, both very directly in coaching and training and development, and psychologically in environment, where they are, what culture they exist in, what people and mentors they're exposed to, stuff like that. So I believe, first of all, Scott, if I believed it was all either you're born into it and you have what it takes, or you don't, I wouldn't have started this company, because our company's whole value proposition is to give people what is missing in order for them to get to an entirely different level, which is taught, it's learned, right? It's absorbed. But there is a basic level that you have to be at in order to have the opportunity to really thrive.
I agree. Yeah. Look, I think there are people that have innate skills. And so that doesn't mean that they are going to be like perfect salespeople. I've had both. I've had people that just were innately talented at communicating with people. They were very outgoing in a trustworthy way and weren't great with follow-up, weren't great with process, weren't great with administrative tools like CRMs and things like that. So even though they could sell really well, they were weak over here on these other areas. And so they could have done even better, right? And then I've had extremely successful salespeople where I've pulled people from, let's say, more technical sides of the house or more administrative sides of the house. And I could tell they just had, a great personality, but low confidence, right?
Yeah.
Low. Yeah. And so then we could coach those areas. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Let me just expand on that a little bit.
Please, yeah.
One of the things that is an inhibitor of reps coming anywhere close to tapping into their potential is a lack of self-confidence. And that lack of self-confidence gets in the way. But let me explain that a little bit further. This is a little bit correlated to the gray answer I gave you about are you born or are you not born with it? And that is, I'm not referring to the self-confidence that comes from A, the genetic wiring that you were given at birth, and B, the family and the environment you were raised in. That forms up until you're 12 or 13 or 15 years old. That, in order to be successful in our space, has to be there. All right? Because that I can't teach or train or develop. But what I'm talking about self-confidence are all the skill sets and all the arts of what you have to be good at in this business. So if you can imagine, there's a foundation of self-confidence that if I'm recruiting somebody to come into the business, I need to detect whether or not that foundation is there. But that foundation can be there, but then they might not ever develop a heightened level of self-confidence in the 5 or 6 or 7 crucial skill sets and art and craft in this business. And that is trained and taught and coached and developed. You know, the ability to get a referral, the ability to make an appointment, the ability to effectively lead people, the ability to take a great background. All those skill sets have to be developed. And when those are developed to the right level, that gives them that layer of self-confidence. Levels of self-confidence is what gives them the courage to proceed down the paths that they need to proceed. And without being armed with both of those levels of self-confidence, they won't have that courage.
And I want to dive into those 3 C's in a little bit, but I think I've seen you mention how important of an ingredient hunger is.
Yeah.
And so do you feel people lack this or do many people lack this? And does someone cultivate that drive without burning out? You know what? Because I agree. I feel like I might just call it drive, but I agree. If they don't have that edge, that hunger edge, and it's not that oversell, cheesy, cheap thing. That's not hunger for me. It's persistence and always be learning and doing what it takes. Because to me, I'm going to open this up just a second. Sorry for rambling here, but for us, a new sales rep's first hurdle, besides they have to get educated on the products and services and the process and all that, but you have to build a pipeline. And if you can't build a pipeline in a reasonable period of time, you don't even get off the ground. So just thought I'd share those thoughts with you and get your take on it.
You nailed it in the very beginning, and that is how important hunger is. At the end of the day, it's huge. It's absolutely huge, because if an individual, the depth of what I do at the most intimate level that is the most impactful is where I do workshops live, not virtually, live, with groups of 15 to 30, 35 reps, financial advisors. And it's over the course of 6 months, and all in, I spend about 30 to 31 hours. And one of the things that I tell them at the very beginning is the moment that I experience wanting more for you than you want for you, we're dead. We're dead. You've got to want it. Now, we do a pretty good screening process for people to get in our workshops. So I think we're pretty good at avoiding that. But every now and then we get that. But they're there. They're spending money. They're spending time. They come to me. They got to travel. They got to leave their families. I like to make the given assumption that they wouldn't do all that unless they were super hungry and they really wanted to double, triple, quadruple their business for whatever reasons are important to them. And by the way, they're all different. It doesn't matter. But they got to want something so bad, which is the hunger element, that they're willing to go through the trials, the tribulations, the fears, the difficulties, the frustrations that they're going to have to go through, because it ain't easy, because they want something so bad that they're not going to stop until they get it. That's hunger. That's achievement drive. And that I don't think is coachable. As a matter of fact, I know it's not coachable. I was born into a middle-class family. I was the youngest of 5 children. My other 4 siblings do not have that. And they're wonderful people. It doesn't make them bad people. It just is what it is. They don't get why, Jimmy, why do you got to make 7 figures? I'd be like, because if I didn't, I'd be miserable. Why? I don't know. I can't explain it. It just, I know what I want, and I wanted it throughout my life really bad. And that's why I got it. But I can't really put my finger on defining it. Either you have it or you don't. I don't know if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense, because even when I was as early as I can remember, I always knew I wanted to run my own company. I knew I wanted to build something. I knew I wanted to be successful. Did I know how? No. But I knew that was there, and that was my driving force, and I knew I was going to accomplish it. So at that mindset, I never thought about it the way you said it, but I think you're spot on. That's probably that innateness. I'm going to kind of divert for just a second. Do you have experience, though, let's say you have a seasoned person who feels that they are knowledgeable and skilled and don't have a whole lot to learn, compared to, let's say, maybe a younger person that's got that hunger but is a clean slate? And I've had both of those, and I've hired for that expertise, and I think I am 100% failed on that. Like, I haven't had one of them in my short career succeed, where when we bring somebody in who doesn't necessarily have a lot of sales experience, but we teach them and they just drink it up, and they don't have this, oh, I'm not going to do that attitude. Do you have any experience in that?
Oh, absolutely. In our industry, there are 2 very distinct types of people that you recruit. They're called college grads and career changers. College grad is very self-explanatory. That's what I was. I came in right wet behind the ears at 22 years old. My first job out of college, right? That's a college grad. this industry recruits a lot of those types of people,
Mhm.
maybe about a third of the recruits. The other 2/3 are career changers. Now, career changers can be of all ages and experiences, but on average, they're about 30 to 35 years old. They've been out of college for 8 to 10 years. They've been doing things in the corporate world and they've been frustrated and they want more out of their life. And this gives them an unlimited opportunity to go from a W-2 type sales job inside corporate America to an unlimited job where they can build their own practice and they get to determine the size of their paycheck. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And there are two very different dynamics when you're initially training them and developing them.
Yeah. And one of the things I find is that when you're in that 35-year range, you're also at probably a peakish income demand, right? If you're married, if you have kids, if you have a mortgage and cars and college expenses, people sometimes have this really high sort of base requirement as compared to getting that college graduate, as you mentioned earlier, and you can train them. And even if it takes a little bit longer, right? Even I tell somebody coming in, I need 3 years. I'm sorry, I need 3 years. If you can do this for 3 years, you can be at that 6+ range. And they just go, yeah. Not everybody can do it though, because they don't have that drive.
Yeah. But the reality is what you just described, there's pros and cons to both those sectors.
Correct.
The college kid, the pro to that is they don't have what you just said: wives, husbands, children, mortgages, car payments. They don't have a huge nut that they got to have every month. So they don't have as much pressure right out of the gate as a 35-year-old married person with 2 or 3 kids. So you're exactly right. But what does the 35-year-old have that a college kid doesn't have? They're much more mature. They're much more responsible, right? They know how to manage their time. And by the way, they have to get paid. Otherwise, they got really bad consequences. Whereas, especially a college kid who graduates and works at home with mom and dad, if they don't make money, it's not that big a deal to them. They probably aren't going to make money. So there's pros and cons to both those sectors.
100%. And I wasn't trying to pick one or the other. So thanks for clarifying that. And I think it really comes down to that effective sales training program you have and others have, meaning like we have our internal one. And just being brutally honest with your candidates, right? Because if they don't have the ingredient, you help them see if they have it. It just hasn't been revealed yet. But there are some percentage of them that just don't have it. And you need to help them not go through such a painful process. And I think for me, some of these people, they focus on perfection, right? So I know you have a motto of progress, not perfection. Could you share a little bit about that?
I certainly am not smart enough to have owned that statement, but I use that statement all the time because what I say is, don't let perfection paralyze you, because you're not going to be excellent at a master overnight. So you just want to be better today than you were yesterday. And you don't want to fall in the trap of settling. And you got to have an eye on a vision of where you're going, but you have to embrace the accountability of what you need to do day after day to make progress. So yeah, I use that all the time.
Yeah. So valid. And are you practicing your pitches while you're driving? Are you recording them? Are you listening to yourself? Or just improving incrementally? There's so many ways you can do it. So I agree.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The other thing, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the other thing, I just had a meeting with a leader of a firm this morning, and he was sharing with me what is keeping him up at night. And this particular gentleman had 8 reps under 2 years in the business, and he was really happy about 2 and pretty happy about 4 more, and the other 2 he was very frustrated with and wanted to know my thoughts and my advice on that. And we don't have enough time, and I won't go down that rabbit hole. But one of the things I told him is, I said, the first thing I want you to do is take personal responsibility for that and sit back and figure out, what do you own in the reality of why these 2 reps are not doing well? And how can you get better in that? So in the future, you don't do that. And the very first place I want you to start is I want you to be able to put your finger on identifying whether or not it was a recruiting problem or a development problem. Because more often than not, it's a recruiting problem. You learn that these are people that I should have hired to begin with. How did I not know that when I was interviewing them? And what can I be doing differently so I don't even hire people like that going forward? But then once you learn, no, it wasn't a recruiting problem. These people were credible. It was a development problem. Okay, then where did you drop the ball there and how do you get better at that? So I think that there's not enough sales leaders and entrepreneurs that are hiring salespeople that have those two distinctive categories when they're bringing people on.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And an effective sales manager is always recruiting. So they're not feeling like I've got to hold on to these people because I don't have anybody else. But I couldn't agree more.
That's so funny you said that, Scott, because one of the things that you always have a breakthrough when somebody that you're working with says what you want to tell them without you telling them. And when I was asking him about what's holding you back from getting rid of them, in his own words, he said exactly what you just said, but he came back and explained it in one word. He goes, fear. I go, what does that mean to you? He goes, the fear is that I won't be able to replace them and they're not who I want them to be and they're not good like I want them to be, but they're better than nothing. So I guess I just accept them for what it is that they bring. And I said, well, that's a game time decision for you. For what kind of culture do you want to build? Because at the end of the day, what you just described with one word of fear, I would use one word, and that's called scarcity. And you got to have expectations for the salespeople in your culture. And expectations mean nothing without consequences to not meeting them. And if you're going to operate within scarcity and fear, you're not going to hire people when they don't meet your expectations.
100%. Great. So look, I know you have the 3 C's framework. Could you walk us through that?
Yeah, I use 3 C's in 2 different ways, but the one you're talking about is we talked about one already, and that is confidence. It's really important. And then the second one is courage. And the last one is conviction. And the reality of it is that one that has to come before the other. And so the reality is in the business that I'm in, if confidence is lacking, I have to sit back and figure out what is it that I can do to drive one's self-confidence in this industry. And then I started saying, you know what? I'm going to add another C to that. And what that became was competence. And then, so now my 3 C's became 4 C's because I was like, you know what? What gives one confidence is when they're super competent. And if reps don't have the basic skills mastered that I'm referring to as competent, they're never going to get confident. And so therefore, when you can build a program that develops the skills that they need to be competent in, a natural byproduct of that is then slowly but surely, in your terms, progress over perfection, they build confidence. And then when they build that confidence, they get courage, right? And then when they have conviction, which is just a word that starts with C, but it's another way of saying strong beliefs, they can climb mountains. And so it's really trying to break that down. But one of the things that I'm always doing is learning. I'm not smart enough to use the word research, but just fact finding and asking questions and spending time in the industry. And it is amazing to me how, and what I think are the critical components that sales reps in our business have to be competent, how bad they are. When I put them to test, I walk away, I go, I don't even know how the person sells anything. And it's this, the world of sports is a good analogy to use, where practice is a given to achieve excellence and mastery. I mean, senior tour PGA players who are 50 years old still practice on the range 3 hours a day. You know, practice is a given. For whatever reason, at least in our industry, financial services, financial reps under their first year practice, but after that, they just wing it and they just fall into the trap of doing what it is they've always done. They don't spend time practicing to perfect their art.
Yeah, I feel like I've met people going, oh, I I don't want to be salesperson. That's not me or whatever. Or they're like, oh, that person, I could never match what that person does. And you bringing up sports I think sports teams are some of the best run organizations on the planet.
Absolutely.
And you don't run a play. Hey, we got a game this Friday. Let's practice this new play with them.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? No, you're going to practice. And then you've got to perfect it, even if it's working towards perfection, but you're not going to play it and practice it during a legit game. And so when a sales rep's doing a presentation, they're doing discovery, they're doing whatever they're doing in the sales process, trying to close a deal, you're not practicing. You better be practicing. Right?
But I could go down that rabbit hole for a lot. I'm passionate
you
about
and I
sports.
can talk for hours. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm passionate about sports. My son played football for Penn State. But the reality of it is it's a great platform for what you're talking about. And what's missing in business, at least in my industry, which I know like the back of my hand, is a lack of accountability in a checking order for the practice and the pursuit of mastery. Let me give you an example. You just said one. If a football game is going on Saturday and they're going to call a play that's been instituted 2-3 weeks ago in practice, and it's the first time, and it's a pass to a wide receiver that's going to run a 12-yard out, the head coach has to have implicit trust in the wide receiver coach that every one of those wide receivers on that field know exactly how to run that play because they've run it 100 times in practice, and the head coach is dependent on making sure the wide receiver coach did his job. And so the reality is that wide receiver runs a play that's a 12-yard out, and he runs a 12-yard in, and the quarterback throws a timing pass, and it's a pick six. The head coach is going to go to the wide receiver coach and basically fire him. What was wrong with your kid? He's not going to accept an answer. The kid's an idiot. We ran it 30 times in practice. He didn't listen to me. The head coach really run it 100 times in practice. I need to know that when I call a play, your kids are prepared. And if they're not, you're gone. That level of connection isn't anywhere near in business like it is in sports.
100%. 100%. And for me, one of the first hurdles we have when we're talking to new prospects is trust, because we're an MSP. So we're an outsourced IT and cybersecurity company. And if somebody's going to turn the keys to the kingdom over to us, you can imagine that's probably the same level of trust as your clients have, which is turn your financial wealth over to us and trust us, right? So it's probably fairly equal. And so do you emphasize that in your process? Do you feel that you can fake it till you make it? What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I hate that saying. And that to me is just, it makes my skin crawl. I don't believe any good salesperson can be even average with that mentality. You don't fake anything. So that's a sidebar. So what I would tell you is that there are a few critical components that are built into our workshops. And one of them that I would say, if it's not at the top of the list, is in the top 2 or 3. And that is learning how to build implicit trust quickly. And it's earned, by the way. And so as a sales rep, it's not a manipulative process. It's an authentic process. But at the end of a meeting, in other words, I'll say somebody, if you go to a new prospective client, you have a 1 hour meeting with them. It's the first meeting you've had with them. And you've been well referred to them. So you're not just some cold call, but you never met them before. At the end of that hour, they implicitly trust you. They know that you genuinely care about them, and they know that you're good at what you do. The rest is history. So therefore, you don't want to hope for that. You want to proactively behave in ways that are going to create that. What's the biggest way you build implicit trust and demonstrate that you care? You talk a lot less. You ask a lot more in-depth questions, and you do a phenomenal job of listening and clarifying. You get to know things about them that you can't find out on the internet.
If they're opening up to you, like you said, if they're opening up to you, you've got that that the journey of trust started for sure. I think I might have cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. But so that makes sense, right? So this world that we live in is not logical. And so when I say that, and you just gave a follow-up explanation that indicated that you agree with me and that makes sense, then the next obvious question would be like, why don't all advisors do that? And there's a reason why they don't do it. And that is the fact that they're fearful that clients are not going to open up to them. Hey, Jim, I might ask that question. It's pretty personal. What happens if they say, I don't want to tell you that, or I don't want to go there, or I'm not, or they're super close to their chest and they're very private people? That's a fear of advisors. So they don't want to violate that. They don't want to rattle that cage, right? It's interesting.
So yeah, and your prospect's going to pick up on that, right? And there are people that you'll run into that are standoffish or very standoffish. And they took the meeting maybe just because somebody recommended that you do, but let's say you refer or not well referred. Salespeople need to know how to deal with that as well, which is, okay, I've got somebody who's being challenging here, I don't have trust. Then you got to know where you are in the process, back up and go and start there. You might need to say, hey, here's who I am, not being all hot, well, big on yourself, but just so they know they're dealing with a doctor that has credentials, so to speak, right? Yeah. And so all that is in the playbook. We call it a playbook. We have all the different variations of things that somebody could run into in there. So they go, and we took that from sports, of course, because sports teams have playbooks, right?
Yeah. I don't know the cybersecurity space, but I do know financial services. My guess is it's different in the way that what you do, you could be very uniquely good at it. Your cybersecurity software, what you do, what you offer, that is clearly superior, better than your competitors. But in our world, we don't, because the world is so open architecture that it's not like a financial advisor that works for XYZ company has got accessibility to another advisor that works for a different company. We live in a world of open architecture. Any investment, any mutual fund, any piece of insurance, any piece of whatever, pretty much every advisor's got accessibility to it. So open architecture. So therefore, if I were to walk into somebody, and I'm not in the field anymore, but I train reps who are every day, and you got somebody who's a little bit arrogant, a little bit standoffish, like you said, in the first few minutes, they're like, what do you got for me? Like, why should I already got an advisor? Why should I work for you? What can you do for me? And a lot of insecure financial advisors just start opening up and chirping about nothing. About it. In my training, it would be like, I don't even know you. I don't know if you should work with me. I have no idea about you. But what I do know in the back of my mind, this is what I would say, is that you're not going to start working with me because of better rate of returns, or because I got access to better investments, or because I have better this or better that. You're going to work with me because you implicitly trust me. You're going to work with me because I've demonstrated that I've taken time to understand your story and what's important to you. You're going to work with me because I have a huge level of responsibility and care about the work I do, not because of returns and products and stuff like that. And so therefore, the only way I'm going to know that is to seek to understand you, which I want to ask you some questions. And at the end of it, I might not even want to work with you.
Love it. Love that last sentence too, by the way. And so we're very similar. I think we have very similar industries, because cybersecurity, you can choose everybody can choose the same sort of tools that are available out there. And what separates is the way those tools are brought together, the way they are integrated together. And then on top of that, the expertise. Yeah. And so we have to differentiate ourselves in a sea of, on paper, we all look the same, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
This has been great. I always like to end off our talks to give words of inspiration from where you sit. So as leaders plan the rest of this year and beyond, what's one mindset shift that you'd encourage if they wanted to grow without sacrificing, let's say, purpose, health, or fulfillment?
I'd say it's hard to pick one, but if I had to pick one, which you asked me to, I would say to spend some time with a blank canvas in dream time with no limitations, to see where your energy comes from when you allow yourself to dream on what is it that you really want and why you really want it, and what is it that it would look like. and then try to imagine what your life would be like when that came to fruition. Because it all starts with a thought and a vision, and our mind leads and our body follows. And if you can spend some dream time by beginning to create that, and then start to connect the dots to bringing it to fruition, that energy can create a drive that you've never experienced before that moves you. And I'd say start there.
Yeah, that's clarity, man. That will provide clarity, and people don't understand the power of what you just offered them. That was worth the price of admission alone. Thank you so much, Jim. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your perspective on mindset, performance, and all of that. You are awesome. Thank you so much.
God, it was a pleasure to be here.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Have a good rest of the day.
These are the kinds of things leaders don't always slow down to talk about. The mental side of growth, the plateaus, and what actually changes when you move to the next level. Now, I know a lot of our listeners are going to hear pieces of their own journey in this one. Thanks for spending part of your day with us here on One Step Beyond Cyber. Now, if you had a favorite moment or a takeaway from this conversation, let us know. And if there's a topic you'd like to hear us dive into, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and one step ahead.